Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the opening of the new Jordan Peele film Nope, and it did come in underneath what some of the projections were saying, though still technically within the range. We'll talk a little bit about what that possibly means for the future of Nope as far as its prospects of being financially solvent. We'll also talk about the third weekend drop-off for Thor Love and Thunder, which is continuing to drop in number and has at this point not even broken even yet. That's right, the film has not made its money back at this point, has not therefore made any profit yet, and even though I do suspect that it will be able to do that by next weekend, the fact that it will take that film about 4 weeks in order to break even for an MCU movie is not a good sign for things going forward. So we'll talk about that, and we'll also continue to talk about the numbers for Top Gun Maverick, doing insanely well now, surpassing domestically even the adjusted for inflation total domestically of The Last Jedi, which just makes everyone very, very happy, I feel. And we'll talk about that and break that down and other films as well. Before going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. And also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So the first film to talk about is the new film Nope, which opened for Universal with $44 million domestically, opening at over 3,700 screens. This is the largest budget that Jordan Peele has had to work with as of yet. And I will say that the vast majority of that money is spent pretty well. The effects for the aliens is especially, I think, pretty strong and pretty well done, though it is definitely a film that at times, because of various CGI elements and just very artificially looking elements, could have been looking a little bit better, but I think the $68 million is spent mostly well. I think having a pretty good cinematographer to boot is probably a big help with that as well. But anyway, still doing quite well with $44 million. And though this is stronger than where we saw his original film Get Out be, it is also smaller than where his last film Us was. So we'll have a comparison of those three movies so that way we can figure out exactly where this film is going to fall most likely as far as what the end total likely will be based off of the numbers as they stand and the pretty rough word of mouth or very mixed word of mouth to say the very to say it the most kind that I possibly can. So we also have Thor Love and Thunder coming at the number 2 spot, another $22.1 million, but that's another 53% drop. And even though they are keeping it and willing it to stay in theaters, as it is still having a decent per theater number with $5,000 per theater, it is also a situation, though, where the MCU, I think, from this movie and from now this third week number, is showcasing why people like John Campea and others have been so incredibly wrong on their takes that, oh no, Thor Love and Thunder is doing great, and you're an idiot if you think it's doing poorly. Are you sure you want to stick with that? Do you want to restate your facts maybe? Do you want to restate your case perhaps with this information as we currently have it? Again, this film has not made its money back yet. This is an MCU movie. MCU films tend to make their money back in the first or at the very least the second weekend. This is the third weekend, and it's not likely to reach its break-even point until its fourth weekend. That is a very poor showing. This is a movie that will end up being one of the lowest grossing MCU films of all time as far as actual net gain profit is concerned. And at the end of the day, that's what ultimately matters. Do you make your money back on your film or do you not? When it comes to a film like this from the MCU, which is meant to specifically and is been created and formed to make money, when you're barely making anything back on your return, it's not a good sign. It is not a good thing. Thor Love and Thunder is not doing very well. And though it won't be a massive flop as far as money is concerned and losing money, the fact that it's not going to make that much in profit is, I think, a pretty dark sign for the future of the MCU, because if even Thor, which we look at the last film, Ragnarok, making upwards of $800+ million worldwide, this film going to maybe barely get to $700 million or so, which, yeah, it's still making money back, but is definitely on the low end as far as worldwide box office is concerned for a lot of these MCU films. Are we going to have an honest discussion with ourselves or not at this point? Time to wake up, people. Anyway, we have also coming in the number 3 spot this week, Minions: The Rise of Gru from Universal, another $17.7 million for them, a 34% drop. Speaking of films that is actually showing what an actual box office success looks like, which is the case of Minions, this is a movie that is doing incredibly well. It's made over $640 or so million worldwide. That's an insanely high number for this movie. It's doing incredibly well up against even not just the competition for this year, but also up against previous films within that franchise. So yeah, this is exactly what it looks like when you have a film that is actually succeeding. Not only was it able to make its money back relatively easily, but it was also able to get to a point where it even had it cost as much as Thor Love and Thunder, which it didn't even come close to costing as much as, it would have also been able to make its money back by this point. So that is, to me, saying a lot more towards Minions and a lot less towards Thor Love and Thunder. Coming out of number 4 spots in its second week of release is Where the Crawdads Sing, making $10.3 million, a 40% hold there, or 40% drop. So a pretty strong number for Where the Crawdads Sing. It is on pace right now to be able to make its money back and to make a little bit of profit to boot. Coming in and still hanging out in the top 5 even after 9 weeks of release, still hanging out here. Awesome to see it, is Paramount's Top Gun Maverick, making another $10 million and another 19% hold from the previous week. This is what success looks like. That $635.5 million domestic number, by the way, is now higher than the adjusted for inflation total box office number, total domestic number for Star Wars The Last Jedi. As you can see, Star Wars The Last Jedi capped that at $634 million in the domestic market, whereas right now, as you can see, Top Gun Maverick is destroying it. And this is exactly what happens when you have, a film, on one hand, a film that actually gives audiences what they want, actually respects the fan base, actually respects the lore, and a film, on the other hand, which, it had a massive opening weekend, and a lot of people were excited for it because it was the second in a franchise of films, but it was so bad and so detrimental to the actual franchise itself, it made $700 million less than what the previous film had done. So anyway, it's always fun to see The Last Jedi get beaten, especially when it gets beaten when you adjust the numbers for inflation, because, hey, if I'm going to play that game one way, I got to play that game always. And so, yeah, screw you, Rian Johnson. Elvis coming in at the number 6 spot, making another $6.3 million, getting very close to its break-even point with very strong holds from week to week. Even though it's not the most impressive box office we've seen, it is doing just enough to be able to justify its own existence by being able to pay for itself at the very least. Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank is, even though not terrible as far as the percentage of drop-off, 39%, not bad, only 13.7 million domestically. So because of such a low number for this movie and a much higher than expected production budget, this film is looking to be another animated flop, and we've seen those before. None as large though as, of course, Disney's Lightyear, which right now is still 175 or so million in the red, and it will not be able to pick itself back up, and probably will be well north of that $150 million in the red. So couldn't happen to a nicer company, as I like to say. The Black Phone making another $3.4 million, another strong hold for that as it continues to make profit. Jurassic World Dominion coming at the number 9 spot with another $2.9 million, which is actually pretty impressive for me, seeing that this film is now available online, even though the film is pretty terrible, but it is available on video on demand, PVOD services as well. And then rounding out the top 5 is Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, which is an indie film that I know very little about. If we look at the worldwide numbers, as you can see, Nope has 44 million. We don't have any international numbers, at least at this point, as the recording of this video, so it's going to be a lot harder for us to really have an understanding of where this film is going to end up in the long run against the other Jordan Peele movies. If we pull up these comparisons, as you can see, internationally, Us was able to make around 81 million, Get Out was able to make around 78, so these numbers really, there is not much difference there, just like there isn't too much difference either between Us and Get Out. This film basically has a cap because Jordan Peele, it seems, has a box office cap. The big difference, of course, is the opening. So Get Out, where it had a $34.1 million opening, which is higher than what they expected because it actually had a pretty strong word of mouth. Because of that word of mouth, was able to end its run around $257 million, whereas the film Us ended up actually having a stronger opening weekend than Get Out because there was a lot of anticipation, even though I think there's a lot of problems with the movie Get Out from its, racial, let's just say its race-baiting narrative. The movie Us has similar styles and similar overtones. However, it is definitely a lot more subtle, it's more symbolic in its race baiting than Get Out, which is a lot more in your face about it. But even that film with $71.1 million definitely did not hold as strongly as Get Out did, whereas Get Out had a weaker opening, but a stronger hold week to week. Us had a stronger opening, but a weaker week to week number. And so that's why they ended up around the same amount. With Nope, we're seeing a film that, yes, it's higher than Get Out, but it's not anywhere close to where Us was, and the word of mouth is pretty mixed on it. So similar to Us as far as the word of mouth campaign is concerned, and so the real question is, because of it making a lot less than what Us did, will it be able to, both domestically and internationally, match up against those previous two movies? I think that it's possible for the film to probably get to maybe the $200 million mark, which would be more than what it would need to break even. However, we'll have to wait and see what those international numbers are before we can actually say for sure. What we can say is the film is, again, doing much better than what Get Out did, even when you adjust for inflation, but still very far behind us. And so it's going to be interesting to see where these daily numbers end up as Nope continues its release. Looking at the international numbers for Thor Love and Thunder, that $598.2 million, yeah, still shy, about 25 plus million shy of its break-even point. And yeah, not looking good. Not looking good. Couldn't happen to a nicer company. And even though I do suspect it will hit that point by the end of next weekend, the fact that it took them 4 weeks to actually get to that point and their prospects of making any massive amount of profit or even a justifiable amount of profit is so small. It's just, yeah, it's not a failure as far as a box office failure is concerned or a flop is concerned, but it's definitely not a success, Mr. Campia. Anyway, Minions: Rise of Gru is a success, however, making $640.2 million worldwide, where The Crawdad Sings at $42.4 million. Top Gun Maverick at $1.28 billion. Pretty amazing stuff there. As I mentioned, you can indeed see that Maverick has now grossed higher domestically than even The Last Jedi did, and this is all even when you adjust the numbers for inflation. It'll be very interesting to see where this number ends up internationally. I don't think it's going to reach the same level or get close to that same level. However, because it is doing much better domestically, you could still end up seeing the film get somewhat close to that Last Jedi $1.3 billion mark, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. I definitely think $1.3 billion is in the cards, but just how much further past $1.3 billion is a bit of a question mark. Elvis, $210 million worldwide. Paws of Fury at 13.7. No international numbers for that film. We have The Black Phone, which has made their story. Clicked the wrong button there. $130 million worldwide for that film. Jurassic World Dominion, $920.5 million. As I mentioned, this film is pretty much done making money at this point. I know that some people have said, oh, just wait for the film to come out in, was it Japan? Has it still had not come out yet in? And they've been trying to point it to the numbers for the other films that have been released in this franchise. I just don't see this film having a lot of momentum, especially since it's already been out for a pretty long time. So even if it hasn't come out in Japan, I'm sure that many people who actually wanted to see the film has probably been able to see the film through other various means. $920.5 million, though, still far shy of that $1 billion number that it should have hit based off of its opening, but because of a really bad story and bad word of mouth was not able to do so. However, not nearly as bad as Lightyear, which is already out of theaters, is already being talked about they're already promoting it basically to be released on to the Disney Plus service. It's still a little ways away, but the fact that it's going to be out on Disney Plus, I believe, beginning of August, yeah. Couldn't happen to a nicer company. Looking at the box office charting, because we like to do some charting here on the channel. As you can see, Nope's $44 million based off of its $68 million budget is around $75.6 million currently in the red. Again, this is just a reminder that when you take the budget, you have the total marketing cost, which is 1.5 times the budget. The break even is typically 2.5 times the actual budget. So the break even for Nope is $170 million. And so though it still has a ways to go, the chances of it getting there based off of the history of Jordan Peele's films seems relatively likely at this point. Where the Crawdads Sing, $42.4 million, now only $10.5 million in the red. And as you can see, we can have some projections now for this movie. It's going to make somewhere between $352,000 and $14.8 million in net gain profit. Whereas Paws of Fury, because of a much higher production budget than one might expect, it cost around $45 million to make, and its break even is $112.5, and it's just not making anything. The film is likely then to lose $55 to $50 million by the end of its run. We have Thor Love and Thunder at $598, again still $16 million in the red. However, I do still have the film projected to be able to make its money back. The question is just how much actual profit does it make? I'm starting to lean a lot more towards this minimum number here, which would be around $51 million in net profit. But as I said, comparing that to some of the other films in the MCU, this would be in the bottom, I believe, 4 as far as actual net gain profit is concerned. So definitely not a good look for this movie or from the MCU going forward. Minions: Rise of Gru, on the other hand, has already made $256 million in net profit. Massive amount of money for that. Black Phone, $52.5 million in the black. Elvis, $210 million means the film is very, very close to its break-even point. So even though its opening was not very strong, it seems word of mouth has been strong enough to push this very creepy-looking Tom Hanks movie in order, or rather, has pushed the film to reach very close to breaking even. Lightyear, however, $171.6 million in the red, with it being pulled out of pretty much all theaters at this point, or very close to all theaters at this point, in anticipation of its release on Disney Plus. Yeah, massive, massive failure for Lightyear. Couldn't happen to a nicer company. Anyway, what are y'all's thoughts about this or any of the other movies that I talked about? Do you think that Nope is going to be able to match up to the other films? I think that, hey, it's right between the first two movies, and so really it just depends on if it's able to match the same international numbers that we've seen from all the Jordan Peele films, which has been, again, around that $81 to $78 million number internationally. So is it going to be able to match that? Is it going to be able to have a similar box office domestic success based on the $44 million? It's going to really depend on that week 2 drop-off, so we'll have to wait and see. But let me know your thoughts about any of these things I talked about in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, lap that fire button on Odyssey. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to my July Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. First starting off with Brandon, let's go Brandon, Chris from the 80s, who you can check out over on YouTube, Garrett Searles, Heimir Ari Hymason, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Father, Luca Illick, Orange Hat Reviews, who you can also check out over on his YouTube channel as well. Congrats on recently getting to 1,000 subscribers. Rosetta Allen, who you can also find on YouTube as well. Stan Andrian and Miss Martin Muses, who also has her own YouTube channel. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the platform of Patreon. We also have my Subscribe Star members, Matt317, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, John B, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alice McCarthy Jr., shout out to you, good sir, and continue that awesome recovery that you are doing. Dean Heiss, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. ZK-Man, you can find out over and follow him on Twitter as well. And we also have my Locals members. We have of course, the lovely and amazing Minnesota hockey fan. How about a hockey player? UAB UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson for the win, and Robert Barnes, as well as Brett D90. Thank you very much. And my last supporter, of course, is the amazing Tina B, Empress of the Universe, one of my mods on the channel. Check out her new show with my other Valkyrie, Stephanie B, on her channel, Tina B's channel, which is called Soup to Nuts. Go check that out because it is pretty awesome and fun content. Anyway, that is going to be it for all of my Keeper of the Bifrost level members and above. If you want your name shout out at the end of every video and live stream, please make sure that you check out the top link of the video description. It is w.lo, the Willow link, as I like to call it, and you can find my Patreon, Subscribe Star, etc., where you can get not only shout outs, but also access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger every single month, and also access to giveaways of Blu-rays, 4Ks, etc., all that good stuff. Check that out in the video description. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.